Election day in Texas is almost here, and the fate of a powerful incumbent is now in the hands of voters.
We never know who's going to come out to vote. So in a runoff, anything can happen.
But who's showing up to vote, and what do they want? We dig deeper to find the issues driving Texans to the polls. The need for electricity in Texas forecast to hit unprecedented levels. Why the people in charge of the grid say you don't need to worry, and what power experts are saying as the state braces for a record-setting summer. Plus, tackling a mental health crisis in Texas.
I will again push a piece of legislation for a department, an office of forensic mental health.
The work for solutions as the number of Texans waiting in jail for a state hospital bed continues to climb.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. Tuesday is another election day in Texas. This time it's the primary runoff, and for both parties, the race for Attorney General is the top item on the statewide ballot. Our Capitol correspondent Monica Madden shows us how all the challengers set their sights on incumbent Ken Paxton.
I'm going to fight for us as the next Texas Attorney General.
Candidates for Attorney General.
I truly would use the Attorney General's office to serve everybody.
Working to galvanize voters to show up in a traditionally low turnout election.
Defeat George P.Bush.
This race isn't about my last name. It's about Ken Paxton's crime.
Both Ken Paxton and George P.Bush spending time and money attacking each other.
Commissioner George P. Bush proposed a woke plan to reimagine the Alamo.
And it's not conservative to cheat on your wife. It's not conservative to abandon the Constitution. And it's not conservative to accept bribes from financial donors.
Democrats Rochelle Garza and Joe Jaworski also on the attack, but not on each other.
I am the best candidate for this race, for this position, and to take on Ken Paxton in November.
Focusing instead on the Republican incumbent.
My complaint with Mr. Paxton is that he stokes endless culture war rather than uses the Attorney General's office to serve everybody.
Analysts say it's a safe strategy for them to focus talking points on electability.
Paxton, the incumbent, he was the closest Republican to losing last time around. So they're set up for an opportunity.
New polling on the GOP race from the Dallas Morning News and UT Tyler shows Ken Paxton's lead over George P. Bush is shrinking, but still a comfortable 6 points in. Polling, of course, only a snapshot in time.
We never know who's going to come out to vote. So in a runoff, anything can happen.
Monica Madden for State of Texas.
We reached out to Attorney General Ken Paxton for an interview and to get his response to what the other candidates are saying about him. We did not receive a response from his campaign. Abortion has become a key issue for candidates in both parties. As early voting started, George P. Bush vowed that if elected, he would support rules to punish businesses that pay for employees to travel to other states to get abortions. In an interview with Bloomberg News, Bush cited the Texas law that bans almost all abortions. He said the next fight and frontier will be taking on companies that circumvent that law. Meanwhile, the fight for abortion rights is a big part of Democrat Rochelle Garza's campaign. Garza represented a migrant teenager who wanted an abortion while she was living in a shelter in Texas. The Federal Office of Refugee Resettlement refused to let the teenager leave the shelter to have an abortion. The case went before a federal appeals court and Garza won. But she says that now the issue of reproductive rights has also become very personal now that she's a new mother.
This is my first child with my husband. We had a little girl, and I want to make sure that she has a future, that she can determine her own course in life, that she can have the freedom to marry whom she loves and to decide when or if or how to become a parent. It's important to pass that on to her because I want to make sure that she has more rights than I had. And I see a state where civil rights are being eroded, and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen for her in her future.
Garza's opponent, Joe Jaworski, is making his case to Democratic voters by pointing to his years of public service experience. He said his record of bipartisanship makes him the most electable in November.
I'm a guy who can bring people together and get a result, whether it's immigration, whether it's commercial interests like consumer protection, whether it's about health insurance. I think the Attorney General can be a great force for good. And right now, that's just completely lost on Ken Paxton.
We want to dig a little deeper and not just into one race on the ballot. What are the ideas motivating Texans who go to the polls? For insight, we bring in Joshua Blank. He's the research director for the Texas Politics Project, which does statewide polling. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So you did a poll of Texas voters earlier this month. What did the results show are the most important issues for voters in the state right now?
Well, unsurprisingly, when we ask what's the most important issue facing the country, the economy tops the list, and really led by inflation. In a follow-up question, we asked Texans, whether they're noticing these price changes, and about 90% of Texans have noticed the price changes. They've noticed that they're going up, and the majority say this is having a major impact on their household finances. So when we look at, sort of what's the big overriding issue right now, it's the economy. When we go to the state level, it's a little bit different. The economy doesn't really lead the pack. What leads the pack, as it really consistently does in Texas, is immigration and border security. But even here, this is sort of a tale of two states kind of situation where about 66%, about 2/3 of Republicans say that immigration or border security is the number one issue facing the state. Among Democrats, 4%.
The leaked draft opinion showing the U.S. Supreme Court is poised to overturn Roe v. Wade brought new attention to abortion rights, obviously. How does the issue of abortion rank for Texans? Is that a strong issue for candidates?
Abortion is never an issue that's going to compete with, say, the economy in terms of sort of what's touching everybody's daily lives. I mean, ultimately, abortion, while it's a big political topic, it's not as a policy something that necessarily people are facing sort of perpetually throughout their life. So we don't see it kind of jump up as the big issue. Having said that, I think everything that we know about abortion and abortion politics was forged basically in the Roe v. Wade understanding and framework that we've been under for the last 50 years. And so I think that for someone like me who follows public opinion and trying to figure out what impact is this going to have on the races, until that opinion eventually drops and the candidates and the campaign start to mobilize it and counter-mobilize against it, it's hard to know whether that issue is going to rise up to the top or whether it's still going to be sort of behind these other issues, the economy, immigration, inflation.
Well, we've talked before how elections in Texas tend to have low turnout, and it's even lower for a runoff.
Right.
So who actually shows up for these elections, and are their top issues different from what you see from voters as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, when we look back, trying to think of what is a high turnout runoff, we think back in 2014, we had a Republican runoff that was relatively high turnout. It was 5.5% of registered voters. So most people are not participating in these primaries. The people who tend to participate in the runoffs, especially the primaries, but then even more so the runoffs, are the committed partisans, the strong Democrats, the strong Republicans, and even beyond that, the committed ideologues, the people who are very conservative or very liberal. And so those are the people who really show up, and their issues are not necessarily reflective of I think, the broader electorate. So you tend to find a lot more niche audiences in both parties, and really a lot more appetite for more aggressive policy than the electorate as a whole is really supportive of.
So beyond the runoffs, looking ahead to November, you did some polling on the race for governor. Anything surprising there?
Abbott's maintaining a lead, but I think it's very early. It's about a 10-point lead, and I think there was another poll that came out this week that showed it a little bit closer than that. And I think that's where we are at this point. We're still about 6-7 months out from the actual general election, which means we're another about 4 months out from the actual campaign that sort of, I would say, normal people start to really pay attention to once we get back to school. But I think ultimately you're going to see a lot of polling between now and November, with Abbott with probably somewhere between a 10-point lead, and maybe every once in a while you might see O'Rourke eke out a 1-point lead, but that's about the range we're looking in right now.
All right, well, thank you very much. Joshua Blank from the Texas Politics Project. Appreciate you being with us.
Thanks for having me.
The need for electricity in Texas will hit unprecedented levels this summer, but will the supply meet the surging demand?
High stress situations, there are potential problems that we could have with the grid.
ERCOT's new outlook and what experts are saying as the state braces for a record-setting summer. A growing backlog of Texans waiting for mental health care so they can stand trial. The update to our investigation and the efforts to find solutions to this ongoing problem. The bills stopped coming, but then the costs started rising for some TexTag customers. How questions about data are affecting drivers on some Texas toll roads.